And I've been investigating together with my student. We've been investigating the company ownership of the one of the mobile communication providers. Actually, the government, for 6 years, they told us that it was 2008, and for 3 years then. They've been telling us that Siemens, it's German company, they own this mobile communication company. And there was no information about the other investors in this endeavor. But Siemens, it sounds reasonable and it sounds solid, so nobody questioned that. And in 2008, we got official information that Siemens has nothing to do with that. So the government was simply lying to public, like blatantly lying to public that Siemens is the owner of the company.
There are other Azerbaijani journalists who are facing similar fates for exposing corruption. I wanted to mention the case of Afgan Mukhtarli, who I know Khadija would have gotten to with a bit more time, who he's another Azerbaijani journalist who's worked tirelessly to expose corruption. He was living in exile in Georgia, and last year was abducted, resurfaced in an Azerbaijani jail, was charged with a variety of trumped up politically motivated charges, including illegal border crossing, even though he was abducted. He was recently sentenced to 6 years in jail, and a number of personal tragedies have happened that have made his case particularly heartbreaking, and many others. But it's not just Azerbaijan. But
do you think the basic problem is that they're revealing the secrets of the government's money that the government really doesn't want anyone to know?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think as we get more widespread investigations released, the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, all of these things have really opened the floodgates for this sort of attention to the reporting and impact that this reporting has had, which I think has in time maybe increased the risks, or at least increased the visibility of the risks that journalists take on in exposing these issues. I wanted to refer to some figures from Reporters Without Borders. If I say RSF, it's because internationally we're known as Reporters Sans Frontières, our French name. So RSF's year-end figures from last year, 2017, 60% of the journalists that were killed were deliberately targeted.
I got interested in Bill Browder's work because I had been looking at a number of different things internationally around how do we stop the contamination of our system by people under, resourcing, if you like, crime, trafficking in people, but also domestic slavery and so on. And I wasn't particularly looking at Russians, first of all, but I started getting interested in how he'd managed to get the Americans to buy into this idea of putting people on a list and having them blackballed, if you like, and that they were not allowed to keep their assets would be frozen in the United States, and that they would not be allowed visas. And that is one of the best ways of getting to these folk. He came to us to talk about, to parliamentarians, to talk about how this might be done. And we've done the classic British thing, which is that rather than go full out for a Magnitsky law, people don't like in Britain laws that have got folks' names on them. So, and so they prefer things that are called rather obscure and complicated things, but hidden in there are ways to get at people. But the way that it started being done was that in the Commons there was an amendment made to a finance bill which was really about giving the powers to the state to freeze assets. And the truth is, it hasn't so far been used very much.
So if anyone here, and I don't want to speak for anyone obviously, but if anyone here should think that your bill, which would stop the people who did this to her coming here and using London as their playground, if they wanted to help that bill,
how can they do it?
How can they help?
Well, what I would say is to try and keep following it, because and then writing up. I would like more research done into how often has the Home Office ever prevented anybody getting in here who's of this high order. They spend all their time trying to keep out asylum seekers that people in my chambers represent,
Journalists.
and journalists, and at the lowest level. And yet they do, and there's no doubt about it, people have no difficulty getting in here if you can show the colour of your money.
And what's the answer to if a politician wants to come back to you and say, well, we've taken back control now, and frankly we're kind of desperate for all the money we can get, We need
Well,
journalists.
it's one of the things that we should be talking about in the whole business of pulling out of Europe. Because, of course, one of the reasons is deregulation. One of the things that people want is not to have to, meet the standards that we're trying to set across Europe. Whatever your complaints about Europe, and we all might find ones that we are on our personal list of complaints about Europe, but if you want to change it, it's better done with us all, hanging in together.